Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's gone.
Test, test.
Oh, it all worked out.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Could I have everybody in the audience named Michael stand up real quick? This is very important. Everybody named Michael.
That got real awkward real fast.
Okay, this concludes the mic check.
Helium's back that way.
Ha.
Ladies and gentlemen, our general manager.
Thank you, thank you. So yes, I am the general manager, Pat Downey. As for what that entails for events, I am the one who tells you where the bathrooms are before the event. So yeah, thank you all for joining us today at the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library. I do have to ask, whose first time is it here? Wow, wow. It does beg the question, why? I kid. We're happy to have you all this evening with us for an evening with Sarah Phillips. In conversation with Chris LaFave, our fearless curator. And I hope he won't mind me saying, proud owner of a Grateful Dead pizza box. So, his other greatest achievement. We kid. So, to the meat of it all, bathrooms, if you require a bathroom this evening, just back that way. The bar will still be open throughout the event if you need any refreshments. Trying to think of anything else. Yeah, emergency exit, just go to that door there. I'm not anticipating or planning anything, but yeah. Before we begin, some thank yous to you all for being here, but to also some folks who donated to help this event be possible. Robin Gobetz, James Iddens, Robert Kravchuk, and Jason Sears, thank you very much for donating to help make this event possible. I would also like to thank the board and staff of the Vonnegut Museum. Thank you to Rediot, who checked you in. And then thank you to Midwest Bartenders for providing a bartender for tonight. Without further ado, thank you for joining us for an evening with Sarah Phillips.
Go ahead and give the microphone to Sarah.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okie dokie. My name is Chris LaFave. I'm the curator of the Kurt Vonnegut Museum and Library. It is my great pleasure and privilege to interview Sarah D. Phillips, the author of Kurt Vonnegut in the USSR. Not only does she have an awesome book out, but we built an exhibit up on the second floor based on this, and this has been a really wild and awesome experience, and I have been dying to ask you this question in public for years now, since 2014.
Better sit up straight.
Yeah, how did this book come to pass? Oh, no, sorry, how did you get into Kurt Vonnegut?
I promise that Chris didn't plant this question, but Chris, in part, you're at fault. It's your fault. 2016 maybe, 2016, we'll say. My husband William and I were up here in Indianapolis. We live in Bloomington. And we went to a Maceo Parker concert right here across the street. And we went for a bite to eat afterwards, and we met this lovely gentleman named Chris LaFave. And he said, "Oh, I'm the curator at the Kurt Vonnegut Museum. Would you like a midnight tour?"
My girlfriend at the time was enraged. I just want to go to bed.
She was not happy, but against all rules and propriety, I'm sure, Chris took us over to that space, which was not this huge space that we're in now. It was the original museum, which was amazing and beautiful, and we could tour it in, a half hour or so, I would say. And so that was really my first introduction to Kurt Vonnegut. I hadn't grown up on Vonnegut. I hadn't read him very much at all, and it was really that experience and Chris taking the initiative and taking the time to give us a midnight tour.
Yeah, my parents, they were waiting all their lives to hear my name and initiative in the same sentence. Poor thing, they can't be here today. Oh, man. So after that tour, though, what was the next step?
Yeah, so the next step came about a year later. So I'm a professor of anthropology down at IU in Bloomington. And the IU Center for the Public Arts and Humanities put on a really special kind of effort for one of the Grand Falloons. It was probably one of the first ones, I don't know, it was 2017. And Ed Commentale invited faculty from a bunch of different departments to get together and read Kurt Vonnegut's first 6 novels and do public humanities kind of outreach and analysis from our own disciplinary perspectives. And I'll be honest, I hadn't read Vonnegut before then, before 2017, as a full professor of anthropology at IU. So that makes me a little bit embarrassed, but I think putting in the work on this project, I've actually more than caught up on my Vonnegut obsession. But that was a wonderful opportunity to read those first 6 novels really, really carefully, to discuss them with colleagues from religious studies, from English, from physics, and it was just really cool to see how different our interpretations are and what we each sort of clung to and got from each of the novels, given our own disciplinary training and our own interests and sort of methodological principles and things like that. So I was hooked. If you're going to ask me, you probably won't, but just to head off the question, what's my favorite Vonnegut book? It's the first one I read, and that was actually Player Piano. And that's not many people's favorite Vonnegut book, but I cling to that. I just love the topics. I think it's amazing. I know he hadn't yet sort of developed that signature Vonnegut style that he's known for, but I really love Player Piano, and I could read it over and over.
Player Piano is going through a very quick resurgence in popularity right now. Largely due to when the book came out in 1952, Vonnegut would always say, well, the public wasn't ready for a book about technology putting everybody out of work. Back in 1952, they thought it was science fiction, and when I'm giving tours of the museum, I would say, and today we call it a documentary. So they tried to publish it again as Utopia 14, and it led Vonnegut to say, critics like to use science fiction as a urinal. And I would sure like out of said urinal.
Yeah.
God, he was good with words, eh?
He was amazing.
Yeah. I was actually, my next question, I wasn't going to hammer you too hard on your favorite Vonnegut book, so thanks for pre-answering the question.
Sure.
I love it when people come prepared, because I don't. What I was going to ask you about, you talked about people from different disciplines. Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm deeply curious. Sometimes when I loaned Sirens of Titan to a friend of mine who suffers from depression, and he was furious because he read Church of God the Utterly Indifferent, and he was like, that made me so sad. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I reach for that humor when I want to feel better. I want to feel like everything's outside of my control.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, again, I think I had never really thought of what it would be like for a physicist to read Cat's Cradle, right? What would it be like for someone from religious studies to read Cat's Cradle? I mean, that should have occurred to me, but I hadn't really thought of it. Just the sort of how people really dig into let's say kind of the moral questions that different books bring up, whereas others are more interested in the humor, right? I was really interested in the fact that Vonnegut was trained as an anthropologist at the University of Chicago, and he started out, trying to write I think it was a master's thesis about Native American religion, and we actually see that thread, coming through some of his books. So I I tried and mostly failed, but kind of tried to sort of follow Vonnegut the anthropologist and how he was kind of working that through in some of his earlier novels. So that was my original obsession. But when I read Mother Night, and which was all about, authoritarianism and fascism, and was very critical of the Soviet Union, and then started learning that in fact, yes, Vonnegut had been very popular in the Soviet Union, although Mother Night was not translated into Russian until the fall of the Soviet Union, I think 1992. It was never translated. It was never approved for translation. But the Soviets were reading other of his novels in translation beginning in 1967, was actually the first one.
I saw that in your book, and there was like criticism of the translation. What was the name of the translator again?
Of which one? Of Player Piano?
Of the first one, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the first Vonnegut book to be translated into Russian was Player Piano. It was someone called Bruckner, who I've never heard of before or since. And, I didn't read the translation, to be honest, but it was highly criticized. And then the woman who became Vonnegut's translator in the Soviet Union, who you'll learn a lot more about tonight, and in the exhibit, Rita Wright-Kovalyova, she quickly retranslated some of the really kind of mediocre translations that had been done before she stepped up to the plate.
Like a hero.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so that brings us to why the Soviet Union, how the Soviet Union, because that's actually something I didn't know very much. I mean, I was aware of Rita, and I was aware that Kurt was celebrated as a hero by the Czechoslovakian jazz community in the 1980s for defending them from the ridiculousness going on. And I was like, I really want to see that plaque.
Yeah.
I want to go to Prague,
Yeah.
drink a beer right in front of that plaque.
Yeah. Yeah. And you shared that with me. I wasn't aware about that either. Yeah, so there's many threads to this story. I'll start with one of the sort of obvious questions, which is, why did I care, right? Why did I care about Kurt Vonnegut in the USSR? I'm a scholar of Ukraine. I have studied Ukraine since 1995, and that's really been, my kind of niche has been Ukrainian studies and studying Ukrainian culture, the language, gender, disability, all kinds of things. So this was not an obvious book for someone like me to write. I'm not a literary scholar. I'm not a scholar of translation studies or anything like that. But I did spend time in the former Soviet Union, and I do love to read, so those were two of my qualifications. But as I was working on this public arts and humanities project with the colleagues and reading Vonnegut's first books and reading Mother Night, I just started Googling. I started getting really curious about whether Vonnegut had been translated in the Soviet Union, who was reading him, how he was interpreted, how people, how did they find him. And I ran across an article in the New York Times Book Review, 1977, and it was called Vonnegut, Big in Russia. And it was written by a scholar named Donald Feeney, who got his PhD from Indiana University in the Slavic department. And I was just so curious, who is this Donald Feeney? How does he know all of this? How does he know Vonnegut was big in Russia? And I started following the breadcrumbs that Donald Feeney had left. And they were multitudinous, and they were wonderful, and he really laid the groundwork for this project. And I'm very honored to say that Don's son, Bruce, is here tonight, came here from Boston. And Bruce's wife, Tracy. So it's so amazing that you all could come. I never met Don, unfortunately, but after I gave a lecture about the book that was online for the College of Arts and Humanities, actually, no, it was the Alumni Association, excuse me, at Indiana University, and it was broadcast online. Bruce got in touch and said that they had been able to see the lecture, so we've been in touch since then, and it's been a real blessing. But really, this project originated and was researched and was completed in dialogue with Don Feeney. He was an exceptional scholar. He was an amazing bibliographer and published a 10-page bibliography of anything that had been written about Kurt Vonnegut in the USSR, all the translations of Kurt Vonnegut into all the languages, Russian, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, Estonian, Armenian, you name it. If you're interested, I've made copies of that bibliography. I have some with me right now, and there's some available up at the exhibit as well. And he didn't just make bibliographies of Kurt Vonnegut. He did a bibliography of Solzhenitsyn. He did a bibliography of Herman Melville. Salinger was his really magnum opus bibliography, 1,500 entries.
Oh my God.
I mean, this an amazing scholar. And I'm sure there's much more to say that Bruce can tell you about. So come talk to Bruce. He'll tell you all about his amazing father. But it was great. It was great. And it was really a labor of love. And Don Feeney was always whispering in my ear, even though I never got to meet him.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Can we talk about Kurt Vonnegut's first visit to the Soviet Union? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of a funny story, kind of a sad story, but like, so 1967, he gets a Guggenheim grant to go back to Dresden and finish his war novel, and he takes his war buddy, Bernard O'Hare, with him. And there's this beautiful piece in Slaughterhouse-Five, like, in the beginning of the novel, every sentence is memorable. Like, I went to Dayton to see the band Fish once, and there's that scene where he says, Dresden looks like Dayton, Ohio today. There must be millions of pounds of human bone meal in the ground. And I'm just kind of like, that is so funny and so heavy and so weird to say to people from Dayton when you run into them at a Fish concert and say, hey, I work at the Vonnegut Museum. Let me tell you about this. And now this. So yeah, they were middle class. They thought, when are we ever going to get behind the Iron Curtain? They tried to turn it into a Soviet bloc road trip, so to speak. And the first night they're in town, they're in Leningrad. Okay, they're in Leningrad and they're staying in a hotel, which you have visited.
Yes.
And why was he asked to leave?
Yes, so so Kurt Vonnegut and Bernard O'Hare show up at the Hotel Astoria in Leningrad. It's a beautiful hotel, Art Nouveau. It's really beautiful. So first of all, they missed the whole event they had come for. So he said they got flim-flammed by some tourist agency behind the Iron Curtain, and their visa was not correct. Their paperwork was not in order. So when they originally got to the border from Finland, they were coming over from Helsinki, the Finnish-Russian border, they were turned around. So then they had to get their paperwork together. They missed the parade, which was the celebration of the 50th year anniversary of the Soviet Army's victory in World War II. That's why Vonnegut and O'Hare wanted to be in Leningrad. So they essentially had nothing to do when they got there. But they were unceremoniously ushered out of the hotel 48 hours after they checked in with no explanation, basically put on a train and sent back to Helsinki. Didn't know what they had done wrong, what had happened. Years later, Vonnegut learned from the poet Yevgeny Yevtushenko that they had been kicked out of the Hotel Astoria because, since they were trying to save money and share a hotel room, it was assumed that they were homosexuals. And they were just kicked out of the country. This was 1967 with no explanation. So that was his ill-fated first trip to the Soviet Union. Believe it or not, he went back 2 times after that.
Yeah, I was going to say, was your trip to Leningrad cooler than that?
much cooler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, of course, they were suspected spies where they went in East Germany, too. So Kurt was just like, this is the most awkward moment of my life. And he's just like, he was talking about how he got very little for the novel out of the Guggenheim money.
Yeah.
But he still said, God bless it, which is nice of a religious skeptic to say. Tell me more about your travels for this novel or book.
Yeah, this book really started out as a little side project and quickly grew into a full-fledged project that wouldn't leave me alone. So I don't have the numbers in my head of how many archives I worked in, but I worked in some in the United States, obviously the Lilly Library at Indiana University where the Kurt Vonnegut manuscripts are, as well as some of Donald Feeney's manuscripts. University of Louisville, which has Donald Feeney's papers as well. Amazing place to do research. Ordered some things from Columbia University. They have a rare books and manuscripts library called the Bakhmetov archive that had some letters that were relevant. But more interestingly, I did travel to Russia 2 times, maybe even 3 times, to work in archives in Moscow and in St. Petersburg. The richest archive for the project was the Russian State Archive of Literature and Art, which is where the papers of Rita Wright-Kovaleva, Vonnegut's Russian translator, are housed. So that was a gold mine for me, and I spent a couple of weeks there. Also actually went to Dresden. There at I guess it's the University of Dresden, there is an archive where there are oral history interviews on CD with Rita Wright-Kovaleva, done by a Swedish scholar who had interviewed her back in the day. And I was like, wow, they're on CD, like, can you copy them and mail them to me? And they're like, no, you must come to Bremen. So yeah, I didn't really plan to go to Bremen, but it was awesome. Turned into a whole family genealogy thing. Turns out my family came from Bremen in the 1600s. So that was a nice little side benefit. But yeah, again, anthropologists don't normally work in archives, right? We do interviews, maybe surveys, depending on what kind of anthropologist you are, but archival research was a whole new thing for me, and I have mad respect for historians now. The level of organization that you have to have was beyond my talents, so I spent a lot of time tracking down things I had seen because I hadn't documented it, but just really grateful for the opportunity to be able to travel to these archives, particularly since now, of course, you can't work in archives in Russia for obvious reasons after Russia's full-scale invasion. More so, there's documentation of this up in the exhibit, but again, I'm a scholar of Ukraine. That's my identity, and that's where my heart lies. After Russia's full-scale invasion, I was very vocal about my support for Ukraine and condemnation for Russian aggression. And so I have been banned from the Russian State Archive of Literature and Art. So thank goodness the stars aligned, right? And I had all the materials that I needed before COVID and then before the full-scale invasion.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Nobody cheered for me when I got banned from Chuck E. Cheese at my 21st birthday. You never think you can get banned for playing overhanded skee ball, but... So, when you went into that, I wanted to talk about archives with you a little bit. Mark Leeds and I, the author of the Vonnegut Encyclopedia, we should cheer for him too.
Yes.
He's not here tonight, but he's very awesome. He not only do we have the Vonnegut Encyclopedia back there in the gift shop, but we also have his short children's story called The Duty Story about what happens to our refuse. It's a wonderful children's book. So we were sent to the Lilly Library once to dig into how Vonnegut, it's a picture book, yes, how how Vonnegut supported his family as the short story writing market crumbled in the mid-1950s. Thanks a lot, television. And we just got transfixed by the archives, because like I've never found a place where, and I have ADHD pretty bad, but like I've never seen a place where you can go so far down a rabbit hole of not what you're looking for at all, and you will enjoy it. So that's the problem, is because 3 hours later you're like, oops. So how many times did that happen to you? I'm curious.
Yeah, I had so many aha moments, and just the feeling of nobody's touched this document in 50 years, and suddenly I get to read this private letter from somebody to somebody. You know, it's like, I don't know, it was great detective work. I really loved the kind of sensation that you get in the archive. But I can tell you about one really special moment in the Lilly Library specifically. I was going through the Vonnegut papers and just basically looking for whatever I could find that had anything to do with his relationship with the Soviet Union and his, his relationship with his translator and all those things. So I'm in a box that honestly is kind of boring. Like, it's just a bunch of letters that don't have anything to do with it, and I'm like hungry, more like hangry, you know, and I'm ready to be done. And suddenly I stumble upon this collection of letters that is between Kurt Vonnegut and a woman named Natalia Shulga, who is in the audience tonight right here. Right here in the front. And it's a long story, and Natalia can tell it much better than I can, but my discovery in the archive was that in the mid-1970s, a couple of teenagers who were living in Kiev, Ukraine at the time, a woman named Natalia, who was 16, her friend Alexander, who was 12, were enamored with Kurt Vonnegut. And they were also amazing artists. Now, mind you, 16 and 12 years old. And they get the idea, what if we were to illustrate some of our favorite key scenes from Vonnegut's books? This is making me tear up, you know, like just the creativity. And even the idea that, you know, we have enough goomph, I don't know how to say it, like we're as sure of ourselves that we can illustrate Vonnegut's books. So they made 6 amazing illustrations, color pencils that they got from Czechoslovakia, Koh-i-Noor, if anybody is in the art world, 36 different colors. And they did these illustrations of scenes from Breakfast of Champions and Rosewater and Slaughterhouse-Five. And 20 years later, Natalia was a postdoc scholar at the University of Rochester. And she was able to, Vonnegut just came through town to give a lecture. She was able to meet him and tell him about the project, and then eventually was able to send him really high quality copies of the illustrations. So that's what I discovered in the Lilly Library, just in the middle of a box of, you know, letters. And those were the kinds of moments where I just realized what Vonnegut means to people, you know, and what he meant to these young people growing up in the Soviet Union, who were just devouring his works and really identifying with him and wanting to be creative alongside him. It was just so inspiring. And so finally was able to track down Natalia and get her side of the story and sort of round things out. And luckily the illustrations are featured in the book. I was able to get color plates, which was amazing, and just really grateful to her for being so open and generous with her history.
And some of them are on display upstairs.
Yes, they are a key part of the exhibition upstairs.
Yeah, I'm emotional now too.
Yeah.
It's interesting how our stories travel. You know, I've been working here for 15 years, and we meet book people. And I mean that in all capital letters. I mean the people who are covered in tattoos, but all of the tattoos are literature related. And it's just really intense, because one thing they all bring up is that book they lost. Kind of the same as when we were kids and we'd lose a CD and it'd be the end of the world. And a friend of mine pointed out, it's like, you know what I do is I loan books and I say, I'm not going to hold you to this because I don't want to spend the next 3 years of my life panicking about this book missing. I want you to give it away. And I did that once with a book, and to tell you the truth, I thought I'd be upset about it. And then like years later now, I'm just kind of like, man, that book could be literally anywhere. Inspiring who the hell knows, and that's really cool.
Beautiful.
So we have to get to Rita.
Yeah.
And we have to get to the Soviet Union, and the fact that the Soviet Union had an interesting relationship with American authors who were critical of America, because, like, take Animal Farm, for example, you know, the Soviet Union were like, oh, not an Orwell book. And then, at first they were like, oh, this is great. And then it said new boss, same as the old boss, and they're like, screw this book. And then America was like, this is a great book. So I'm curious.
Yes. I think I understood your question.
Yes. Sorry. Reiterate and the delicate balance of translating Vonnegut, censoring Vonnegut.
Yeah. Yes. So Natalia and I were actually talking about this last night. To give permission to translate a book, the translator or whoever was working on it would have to make a proposal. They would often do a sample translation of a chapter or two, but then there would also be a proposal where they articulated, why is this book important for the Soviet people? Why should our people have access to it? So what we were noticing last night reading through some of these proposals is they usually start with the obligatory kind of first paragraph about who Kurt Vonnegut was. He had the perfect biography to be someone revered in the Soviet Union because of his service in World War II, because of the fact that he had survived the firebombing of Dresden under the Nazis, right? He was a POW captured by the Nazis. The fact that the Soviet Army had liberated him in Dresden, a fact that he always mentioned in every context. He never let an opportunity go by without thanking the Soviet Army for rescuing him in Dresden. And of course, his critique of the U.S., right? His criticism of crass consumerism, of what capitalism had done to the United States, particularly to people's sense of wonder, I guess, and learning. Like, people didn't like read books anymore. And also, of course, his anti-Vietnam stance. And so all of those things were like in the obligatory list for why Kurt Vonnegut is a good author to translate. And then they would go on and get to the really good stuff, right? Get to the stuff about morals, about technology, about needing to, think really hard about our technological kind of inventions and where we're going with that. And so it was a pattern. But yes, that's one of the reasons that he was a sanctioned author, was because of his cred, right, as a World War II veteran who was critical of the United States. There were things in his books that were censored. I was actually surprised at how much got through. There were two kinds of censorship in the Soviet Union, political and puritanical. So anything that was critical of the Soviet Union in any way, shape, or form was either modified, softened, made benign, or just left out. Anything that was blatantly sexual, or even like about kind of like private body parts, was also censored, left out, changed, something like that. So Breakfast of Champions is the novel that was sort of had the most slashing and burning in it. What else can I say?
No, I mean that's what I was getting at, because
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the idea. It's like, well, we want some of this guy's message, but some of it's not okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a hodgepodge instead of just banning this person. And I'm like, wow, that's oddly particular.
Yeah.
Did you get to? I'm going to get to the question answering thing here pretty soon, I think. But did you get to know any translators in this process?
Ooh. That's a great question. I mean, yes and no. I got to know translators through what they had written. I was really interested in this specific time period, right? The 1970s, basically. And Rita Wright-Kovalova, when she started translating Vonnegut in the mid-60s, she was already 70 years old. So she had had a whole career, and translating Vonnegut really kind of breathed new life into her translation career. The translation that really put her on the map was, I think, 1950 something, Salinger's Catcher in the Rye. It was a cultural phenomenon. She always bragged, and this is true because I counted. She said, I translated the word bastard 18 different ways. Actually, I counted and it was 26 different ways. So yeah, so it was amazing. And Bruce and Tracy and I were talking about the irony of the fact that Rita Wright-Kovaleva's translation career really took off with Catcher in the Rye in the Soviet Union in the 1950s. Donald Feeney's teaching career tanked in the 1950s in the United States because he assigned Catcher in the Rye to his students to read. High school? Was it high school? In high school, he got fired. So the irony is just really, really hard to miss. Back to translation. I read everything that Rita Wright ever wrote about her translation practice. I can't emphasize enough what a creative, amazing wordsmith Rita Wright was. Dovlatov, if any of you know this other a Soviet writer who was exiled to the United States, he would tell this long, convoluted joke about Kurt Vonnegut in the USSR, but the punchline was, Vonnegut writes better in Russian. And, you know, I think there's an argument to be made that her translations were just so spot on, but her practice was not the literal translation. She wasn't translating it literally. She was like punching you in your good old Soviet gut, right? To really hit you with the translation and the true meaning of what Kurt Vonnegut was trying to say. So it was just amazing kind of learning from her, you know, through that. And in fact, I'm hoping to embark on some translation of my own in the future. I've really gotten the bug.
Yeah, that reminds me of, that joke is very funny. It reminds me of Vonnegut talking about, I wish my voice in literature was more musical and lyrical. I sound like a person from Indianapolis. And then there's a joke about a buzzsaw in there somewhere. And that brings me to the point, because Rita Wright was writing about how she was really obsessing over how to pronounce or write the word Hoosiers.
Yes.
And how she didn't want to offend the great people of Indiana.
Yes.
And I was like, as someone with a type B- personality, I just can't fathom spending, we were talking about that, like I can't fathom spending that much time trying to figure out how to portray one word.
Yeah.
And that's why I was asking you about translators, because I was like, they all sit there for hours on end sweating over their craft, and it must be enjoyable to them.
It must be. The problem with Hoosier is that in Russian, the word Huzha, if something is Huzha, means it's worse, means it's bad, it's worse. So if you're saying Hoosier, it's like saying those people are worse. And so she didn't want to offend the good people of Indiana. In the end, she went with Hoosier, and she said, I think it sounds just fine. But there were certain, some other really funny examples like that. In the archive, I saw, like, she had written on the front and back of 2 pages, she was trying to translate hi-ho, 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 to all these different ways, She tried like 20 different ways, and in the end, she left it hi-ho. So.
So awesome. I hope you all buy Sarah's book tonight. It is fantastic, and it's so full of stories we were never going to hear otherwise. So I wanted to talk about the book banning. Let's give, especially to your father, let's give a round of applause to all the awesome teachers we've had in our lives. That's a long one. That's a long one. That's cool that we've all had awesome teachers like that who, you know, most of us probably do have at least one story where someone handed us a book that they career-wise probably shouldn't have, and it was awesome. Books are awesome. And should we give William a shout out because of the CDs?
Let's do it.
Okay. Sarah's partner William is here. He was at the Maceo Parker concert. And when I mentioned I was a Grateful Dead fan, he went into his car and brought out 3 different CDs from 3 different Grateful Dead concerts and gave them to me. They were burned CDs, it was actually September of 2014.
Oh, was it that long ago?
Yeah, according to math, that was like 12 years ago. So thank you. I went to Ball State. That was a hell of a reach for me. Safe space for C students back in the day. It's way harder. I would not get in today. So, you know, it was a really neat experience because 12 years had gone by and you come by to put up an exhibit and William comes by and brings me a bunch of John Coltrane CDs, disc 5 and disc 7. So I just want to thank you, good sir. You are one of my favorite people. And my wife thanks you because she looks at my car. I listen to CDs again because my Bluetooth doesn't work, and my car looks like a psychopathic hoarder lives inside of it. So, on that note, I think we're going to open it up unless you have an objection to questions.
Sounds good.
And you guys can use the microphone if you think this cord will reach. Yeah. Oh, the wireless one is probably best for that.
This is going to be a strange question, but the last time I was in Russia, I took an overnight train from Kazan to Moscow, and I shared the cabin with a lady who, when she learned I had a bookstore in Indiana, she said, "Oh, you've read Theodore Dreiser." And I said, "You know Theodore Dreiser?" And she said, "Well, doesn't everybody?" She had learned it, and they had to read it in school. And I've wondered for years, why she had to read that in school, but it sounds like it goes along with what you're saying really was critical of the American capitalistic system.
Yeah.
But she read 2 Theodore Dreiser books in school.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think I can say that in this crowd. What I've learned during this research and just spending a lot of time in Russia and especially in Ukraine is that folks there tend to be a lot more curious about the rest of the world than many of us in this country. Yeah, and so that woman who read Theodore Dreiser, I have no doubt that she had also read Salinger and Vonnegut and Twain and all the greats of British literature and French literature. So yeah.
Unfortunately, we were having the conversation in French, and my French has not been good for 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get into as much of that as I would have liked to.
Yeah. Cool. Did you have a question?
Well, I think it's also interesting to note that Theodore Dreiser's from Terre Haute.
Yeah.
So that's always a good thing.
That was why she asked me that. She knew that.
Right.
I told her if you walked down the street in Indiana and asked 100 people, maybe one would have heard of it.
Here he is, and Sarah knows too. Sweetie, I just want you to tell them some more about Rita Wright. You know, she was an MD. There was a little bit more that's like so fascinating about her history.
It's true. I kind of became obsessed with Rita Wright, and William was the victim of that obsession. But long story short, she was born in 1898 in the Russian Empire, in Ukraine, in what is now Ukraine. And she was the daughter of a doctor. Her father was like a country doctor, who she said a Chekhov type country doctor. And she also went into medicine, but she was educated in a gymnasium in Kursk for young women, and did really well there, made a great impression. Then she went to medical school in Kharkiv, which is in eastern Ukraine, which has had the hell bombed out of it by Russia over the last 4 years. And she decided to transfer from medical school in Kharkiv to Moscow. I think at this time she's 19 years old maybe. And so she takes the train to Moscow. She transfers to the medical school there. And the first thing she does when she gets to Moscow is she goes to a phone booth and she calls up Vladimir Mayakovsky. And she says, I translated your play, Mystery Boof, into German. Would you like to hear it? 19-year-old. She grew up speaking English, French, German, and Russian, and probably Ukrainian. And so she becomes pals with Mayakovsky, you know, this amazing futurist poet, his partner Lily Brick, infamous, you know, lover, her husband, Osip Brick, the Mandelstams, all the people. She becomes friends with them. She's still in medical school, still wants to have a career in medicine. Then she gets this job with this neuroscientist called Ivan Pavlov. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? The brain scientist. She's literally working in his brain institute in Leningrad, doing, you know, experiments with the dogs and things like that. Just an amazing, amazing woman. Tragically, her medical research career was cut short in the 30s. The purges, people in her lab, you know, were purged in all of the political upheaval, and basically she had to leave the institute on the eve of her dissertation defense. Her sister was also arrested, and tragic stuff all the way around. But at that point, basically Rita had to make a living, right? She couldn't do her research, she couldn't go back to the institute, she couldn't practice medicine. And so she said, okay, if I'm going to do this translation thing, I'm really going to have to do it. And so she did, and she made friends with like all the luminary translators, the most famous translators in the Soviet Union. They would say she learned from them. I'm sure she'd say she taught them everything they knew. But she translated Faulkner, Twain, like I said, Salinger. She was just really a remarkable person, and she did lots of translations into French and German as well. Heinrich Boll, she was really famous for her translations of him, and her translation of Slaughterhouse-Five became the basis for a stage play that was put on in 1975-1976 in the Soviet Army Theater, of all places. You can't make this stuff up.
And we have the program on display.
We do.
It's very cool looking.
We have the original program on display and lots of information about the play. Also the proposal that the playwright submitted to get, you know, permission to stage the play. And also, I'm happy to say, Bruce's dad, Don Feeney, went to 2 dress rehearsals in December 1975, and wrote a review of the play that I really relied on in my book when I discussed that play. So again, we could sit here for hours and hours and talk about all of this, but Rita Wright, you don't have Kurt Vonnegut in the Soviet Union without Rita Wright.
I think that's true. Not to give one spoiler away, can we talk about the candle?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fun.
So yeah, Rita Wright gave a candle to Kurt Vonnegut, and I want you to tell the story because I will mess it up probably.
Oh, sure. So I didn't learn about this actually until last year? Last summer? Maybe 2 years ago. William and I met Nanette Vonnegut down in Bloomington at the Grand Saloon. And I was telling her about the project, you know, about the book in progress, and she said, Yeah, my dad used to talk about read or write all the time, and we have this silver candlestick that she gave him in Moscow in 1978. That the story's in the book, as well as a photograph and the inscription by Kurt about the candlestick. But basically, it was something that, so Rita was evacuated with her young daughter out of Leningrad just before the siege of Leningrad in World War II. And one of the things they took with them was this very precious family heirloom, this silver candlestick. And so when she met Kurt in Moscow in 1974, she said, I want you to have this candlestick. It's one of the most, precious things in my family. And you can imagine, I mean, Rita moved from Kharkiv to Moscow to Leningrad she lived in Arkhangelsk, she lived in Vladivostok, she lived in all of these, faraway places. And she carried that candlestick everywhere she went, and then she gave it to Kurt Vonnegut. So it's a beautiful story, and Nanette's daughter has the candlestick and uses it every day.
So just a reminder to buy Sarah's book. It's truly a wonderful resource and a joyous thing. I don't know how much time we have left for. It's 7:22. I know we're supposed to wrap this up at 8. Well, I think our CEO and founder wants to ask a question. So.
I just wanted to. It was really more of thanking you, Sarah, for choosing our venue as a place to present this information, to let us have your book in our gift shop. And Natalia, this is wonderful art. I'm so excited that you were able to include this. What a blessing, and how wonderful to have you here. It's almost impossible to believe you're all here.
Well, I was waiting for that for 50 years.
Yeah. Would you like to say something? Please do.
Oh my God. Because it's recorded. So.
Yeah, come here. Here, take the chair.
No, I'm not gonna sit. That's your chair. It's your throne. I ask for 2 minutes if you allow me to. Sarah already portrayed that story. 2 teenagers, 1 girl, 1 boy who is younger than her, almost 4 years. And my family subscribed to all possible sources of literature, translation, science journals, everything. So I had it in my home before it was the books published. So, and imagine it comes like every 3 months, it's quarterly, and you wait for 3 months for the next chapter to read. And I was hooked with Kurt Vonnegut immediately because I was a member of the science fiction club, and he was represented like science fiction author. Also for me, he was not science fiction per se, like Asimov, No. To me, it was his humor with which he was talking about problems in society when people have tendency to ignore or not talk about. So he presented in a way so universal that back in Soviet Union it was talking to us. And imagine teenagers, they're always revolutionary, they always criticize their parents, they always want to go against the government, whatever. Also you in a society which put you in jail if you say anything. Censorship, Sarah talked about it. And here we are. So, and Vonnegut for us was like father of philosophy, of mentality, of morality. Cat's cradle, that's why I'm scientist, because of that book, okay? And I read it at the age of 15. So that's why it's such a tremendous influence on my life and life of my friend. So when you see these illustrations, each of it took us months to come to the sketches, to create the colors. We wanted maybe sepia, because I was watercolor, clean colors. My friend was like black ink, black pencil, graphic. So it was kind of merger of two completely different artistic approaches, and you will see how our fantasy worked. We had no information about how policemen look like. We had no information about how Kilgood Trout supposed to look. It's like a homeless writer who wrote like the most wonderful books when this Mr. Rosewater wanted to sponsor and stuff like that. So it was the unbelievable journey. And I cannot say anything because I think that Sarah is my chorus member or extended family member together with her wonderful husband and her kids, you know, and I still sometimes ask myself, maybe I'm just a sleeping dreaming. It cannot happen in reality, but it did. Thank you to you. Thank you to you and your hard work, archival work. And thank you for the Vonnegut Museum to continue this legacy. Thank you for Indiana University for Grand Falloon Festival, which happened every year, which also covers art, literature, music, all of that things which Kurt was so fond of. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. Chris LaFave, I want to thank you as well. 15 years with the organization this year, Chris. We appreciate you so much.
Yeah, in case you're ever wondering if the arts matter.
Yes.
I relate to feeling like we're dreaming sometimes.
And so I want to comment on some folks here, some folks who are not here, and then share a couple of other things. So I'm so happy to see the new faces in the audience. We're just so thrilled to have you with us tonight. And there are also faces who've been in our audience many, many times and have pitched in as volunteers, who've donated at our galas and for our fundraisers, you know, all sorts of things. If you are a long-time supporter, please also raise your hand and be recognized. Thank you. And big thanks to Pat Downey. And Reddy is still back there, thank you. And our newest member of our team, Jen Engler. Hi. Jen, thank you so much for joining our team. So we have copies of the book for folks to purchase. I'm guessing you'll sign books tonight. And we also will be able to, you know, show you the exhibit, wander around as you like. To check out the exhibit. Chris, are you heading back up there to talk about? Yeah, Chris Ballard. We really owe Chris Ballard a debt of gratitude for the work he did.
He is our printer.
Yes,
and also my college jam band roadie.
Yes, and a Kurt Vonnegut, the volunteer was
award winner.
Yes, and a volunteer award that we give annually. But I want to mention a couple of other things. So upcoming events, and then I'll just turn it kind of back over to you to finish up. So we have a Kentucky Derby party coming up. That's the first Saturday in May. We have Juneteenth we celebrate each year. We have a 4th of July party with late breaking news about that. Chris, this will be new to you this afternoon. If you're a big Vonnegut fan, if you're familiar with the documentary film that was on PBS. So Robert Whitey, Bob, is coming out to Indy for our 4th of July event. Which also will feature a Vonnegut family reunion. So Mark Vonnegut, son Mark, and daughter Nanny will be out here for the 4th of July. Other family members, extended family, the Liebers, and other family members. So we hope you plan to join us on the 4th of July. We also have an incredible art exhibition opening that day that is from the Jimmy Carter collection. Jimmy Carter actually worked with a number of artists. 19 to be exact, on 18 pieces of art. If I have that correct, I might be off.
Because
Jimmy Carter had 2 pieces, so it went across.
Okay, we're gonna have a cool art exhibit.
It's a bunch of art, a whole bunch of art. So, but it's people like Bob Dylan, and it's
Robert Redford.
Robert Redford, Maya Angelou,
The Dalai Lama.
like all sorts of, Tom Wolfe, all kinds of people.
Ray Bradbury.
Ray Bradbury.
Barrett Vonnegut.
Yes. So please, please join us on the 4th of July as we celebrate the 250th birthday of the Declaration of Independence. We also have a fireworks party that night, and then other things too. We have Band Books Week in the fall. We have Vonnegut Fest. If you're familiar, if you're familiar with the comedian Jordan Klepper from The Daily Show, he will be the Kurt Vonnegut Humor Award recipient this year. For any fans of Jordan Klepper, he will be out here for Vonnegut Fest for Night Vonnegut in
He's
November.
actually coming here?
He will be here, yes. He's already been here before. He's a fan. He's a big fan. So, so if you're not on our mailing list, please get on our mailing list through the front desk or through the website. But also, I have to mention that we just launched a Kickstarter campaign. So the deal with Kickstarter, it's a big crowdfunding campaign. Some of you have contributed to that. We raised more than $100,000 to purchase this building, among other funds we raised. But the thing about Kickstarter is if you don't raise all the money, you don't get any of it, okay? But here's something. We have never failed to meet our goal, so there's no risk in contributing to a Kickstarter campaign. And what this is for is a Tralfamadore exhibit from Slaughterhouse 5. If you're familiar, Purdue University engineering students are creating Planet Tralfamadore up on our 3rd floor. They're making a robotic Tralfamadorian. We've been working with them on it for about a
Billy
year.
Pilgrim and Montana Wild Hack will be there.
Oh yes, it's going to be amazing. So please consider going. Yeah.
If you'd like to donate, there is a flyer on the board right there with a QR code. You can just click it and it'll take you right to the page.
And bring your friends back for Sarah's wonderful exhibit, which will be on display for quite a while. Through September. But yes, please do, join us. We'd love to see you at more events. Again, we're so grateful. And for the scholarship, right? This is new information for so many of us. So thanks for everything you did to pull that together.
Oh, it's been a wild ride and such a wonderful journey, and I'm so grateful to the museum for taking the interest in hosting this, and especially letting us put the exhibit up. I can't say enough about Chris Ballard's work. I mean, I threw some content at Chris Ballard, and he designed everything that you see up there. So it's really phenomenal. And I hope you'll take a look. Please don't anybody move. I want to take a selfie with y'all.
And please enjoy our bar. We got alcohol, not alcohol, ice cream.
Cheese.
Cheese.